Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. No. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
This episode is brought to you by Experian. Are you paying for subscriptions you don't use, but can't find the time or energy to cancel them? Experian could cancel unwanted subscriptions for you, saving you an average of $270 per year. And plenty of time. Download the Experian app. Results will vary. Not all subscriptions are eligible. Savings are not guaranteed. Paid membership with connected payment account required.
Welcome to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. I'm Matthew of castingacross.com, where I explore the quarry and the culture of fly fishing. What do you consider to be the most important piece of fly fishing gear? Now, I think it's not even debatable that a fly rod is the most iconic piece of gear. It's what you think of when you think of fly fishing, and it actually is the thing that connects you to the pursuit. It connects you to the fish. It connects you to the cast. So it's hard to argue that the fly rod isn't the most important piece of fly fishing gear. After that, though, I would say that most folks would assume that the reel is the next most important thing. You spend a lot of money on it. It looks pretty. It completes the fly rod. But the fact of the matter is that for most fly fishers, and I would say that is a quantitative statement, a lot of fly fishers who fish for trout, fish for warm water species, they're not using their reels for a whole lot more than holding fly line. And actually, the fly line is as important, if not more important, because the fly line is built to make that fly rod, that iconic and essential piece of fly fishing gear, function. So what do I mean by that? Well, fly line is what separates fly fishing from other kinds of fishing. We're not throwing straight monofilament. We're throwing a weighted, tapered, more often than not, line that causes that fly rod to flex, whether it be bamboo, fiberglass, or graphite. That fly line causes the material in that rod, which has been tapered by precision engineering, to move and create the energy to push that fly line out to the destination that you want it to go. So all I have to say is fly line is essential for the cast. Fly line is essential for the presentation. And it isn't until you actually get into a fish that the reel comes into play. So if we're talking about just the numbers, a fly line is much more important than a fly reel. I love fly reels. I have fly reels that could stop trucks if I needed them to. But I use my fly line a whole lot more than I use my fly reel. However, I think fly line kind of gets a bum rap. And there's a few reasons for that. One, it's inexpensive. You can get top of the line fly line for right around $100. That can't be said of rods and reels. Secondly, it's not very fun to play with. You go into a fly rod, or you go into your own, or a fly shop, or you go into your own gear and you start playing with stuff. No one plays with fly line. You pick up a rod, you wiggle it. It doesn't do a lot of good, but we all like to do it. We pick up a reel, we make the spool spin, we hear the click, we tighten the drag, we loosen the drag, we feel the weightiness of the piece of aluminum, and we think this is nice. But what do we do with fly line? Maybe we pick up the box, look at the picture, look at the taper chart on the back, which is worth doing. Maybe stick our finger into the hole where the line is, so where you can tell what color it is, and feel it and think, wow, that's slick. But you don't get that same sort of tangible benefit from playing with fly line that you do with playing with a rod or a reel. So I think that's another reason why fly line doesn't get the kind of positive publicity that it ought to. But in many ways, fly line technology has had the most improvements in recent years, and what we have today is far superior to what we fished with 20 years ago, and certainly in years before that. So Why should we consider better fly line? Well, first of all, with a small expense, you can really improve your gear. So if you want to go from a good fly reel to a great fly reel, you're talking going from $150 to maybe $500. To go from good fly line to great fly line, you're talking going from $60 to $90. It's a very small investment. But more than that, more than just spending more, and there certainly is something to be said for spending more, the top of the line fly lines not only are built and structured to perform in extreme conditions, oftentimes the actual formulation is such that it is a more bells and whistles product, whether it be a coating, whether it be a texture, whether it be just other small things like that. Even little things that you might think are inconsequential, but that once that you use them, then you think, wow, this is really helpful, like color transitions between taper sections, so you know how much line you have out. Little things like that that are actually trickling down into more mid-priced fly lines, you find often in the high-priced fly lines. But more than just spending more money, I think it's important to consider the fly line you buy for the kind of fishing that you are doing. And a lot of times, and I know that this was the way that I thought for a long time, I'm just going to spend as much money as I can afford on the nicest fly line and just call that good. Well, if you're fishing under normal trout circumstances, so let's call that, casts of 25 to 45 feet on 90% of your casts, then probably buying the top of the line fly line is a good choice. The top of the line good trout line will work for you because they're formulated for long casts. And that's for trout, that's a 40 to 50 foot cast is a long cast. You sometimes need to cast longer than that, but most of your casts will be at that distance. And most of those lines, the taper, the transition from thin running line up to that thick belly, and for however long that is, whether that be 20 feet, 30 feet, whatever it might be, and then that transition back down to the very thin line, so you have a nice smooth taper transition to your leader, that is built to all be out of the tip of your fly rod so that you're throwing the amount of weight that will cause your rod to flex and get your fly to where it needs to be. That's a gross overgeneralization of the process and a lot of years and a lot of money that goes into making fly line what it is, but that's essentially what you're talking about when you're talking about a line that's built for longer distance casting. Not everyone fishes those lengths. It would be silly to buy a $100,000 sports car if the purpose of you driving around was to move 4 kids. I speak from experience. I don't need a Lamborghini. In fact, I don't even need a fast little, Toyota. I need a minivan, and I need a car that is going to be reliable. And so I don't need to spend $100,000. I need to spend $20,000. And I need to spend $20,000 on something that can fit 6 people in it. And the same thing can be said of fly line. You don't need to spend $120 if you're fishing mountain brook trout streams. You don't need to spend $120 if you're fishing bass bugs. There are lines out there that are the best thing that you can fish for $75, for $60. And so it's not just ignoring fly line, it's making and by ignoring it I mean just buying whatever. It's also not saying, well, I'm going to swing to the polar opposite and spend the most money I can. It's about making an educated decision on what kind of fly line you need. I'll give you a good example. I fish a lot of mountain high gradient streams, and so it would be silly for me to use some of my awesome Big River trout lines that I use on larger rivers in the Northeast, that I've used out on the tailwaters in the South and out West, lines that I can cast 60, 70 feet if I need to. There would be absolutely no point in spooling up my 3 weights and my 4 weights with that and heading to the mountain streams. Is that the quote-unquote best line from a value standpoint on the market? Well, in one sense, yes, but in another sense, it would be completely silly to use that on a mountain trout stream where I'm casting 10 feet and maybe 20 feet at the most. So I pick fly lines that work best for my rods in those situations. And I'll give you 2 examples. One is Cortland's Spring Creek line, and another is Wolf's Triangle Taper line. Great lines. They're not going to break your bank, and they're built to flex a rod at short casting distances. They're built to place your fly exactly where you need it at 10 feet, at 15 feet, at 20 feet. Even with only a few feet of line out the tip of your fly rod, you can make good casts. That's what they're built to do. And so I use those on my, I use the Wolf Triangle Taper on a bamboo 4-weight and a glass 3-weight, and I use the Cortland Spring Creek line on a speedier graphite 3-weight and another graphite 4-weight. And they perform great. I don't feel like I have to spend more than those lines because those lines are designed for the rods I use and the fishing that I do. And so it's an easy choice at that point. Beyond that, how do you figure this out? Beyond saying, okay, well, I just go to a small creek line if my small creek fishing is what I'm going to be doing. How do you figure out what line is best? Well, there's a few things. For one, if you have fished with a particular line from one of the major manufacturers, you have access to that taper chart. Even if you are fishing a line that's years old, there's a very good chance that somewhere on the internet, deep in the recesses of everything that's cached from years and years, you're able to find a taper chart. And if not, you can probably email somebody at one of the major companies. They can give you a taper chart. Again, that chart that shows you what those transitions look like. What, say you have a 5-weight weight forward line from brand X from 15 years ago, or something you even just bought 5 years ago. Pulling up that taper chart and seeing how it went from that running line and got thicker, went to that belly, and then got thinner, and seeing where those transitions are, how long of a belly that was, and you either want to replicate that, which is something that I did. I fished an Orvis line that I loved from about 20 years ago, and I had a lot of them because I was working for Orvis at the time, and I stocked up, and then just a few years ago, I ran out of my last 5-weight of that Wonderline. And I thought, well, now I have to do something I haven't done in years, which is go out and find a new 5-weight line that will work with this specific rod. I loved the way that my Wonderline cast, and now I'm going to figure something out. Well, I still had one of the boxes of Wonderline. I was able to flip it over, check out that taper chart, and it was easy enough to hop on Orvis's website and figure out if they had a line that matched the taper of my Wonderline. And sure enough, they did. I got it, and it actually performs a little bit better. There are a few differences. The taper was a little bit different, but it was close enough that I was confident spending $65, $75, whatever it was, on a new line. Buying a similar line works that way, and also changing something. If you felt like a line was clunky, if you felt like it was like throwing a piece of goat rope out the end of the tip of your fly rod, then you were able to find a line that might be a little bit more reserved in its taper, might have a shorter belly, might have a more gradual transition. If you felt like when you were mending it, it was really, really heavy to move that fly line, finding something that is a little bit more delicate, it can be helpful. Additionally, you also have the grain weights, and not to get too technical, specifically because I'm not prepared to be super technical right now, but figuring out what the grain weights are. There are ranges of grain weights for every, even just floating line. Usually we only think about sinking lines and intermediate lines when we think about the weight of a fly line. Floating lines have different weights, and that's what makes them 4-weight, 5-weight, 8-weight, 9-weight. And so looking at those small things are important. You say, this sounds like so much minutia. Well, it is. But if you've spent $300, $500, $700 on a fly rod, you want that thing to cast as good as you can get it to cast. And a small investment of time, the things we're talking about right now, and then money, buying the best fly line that you can buy, which might not necessarily even be the most expensive fly line you can buy, can make a huge difference in how you cast. I've had rods that I've hated, and I've spooled up with a different line, and I've loved them, and vice versa. A rod that's casted great, I need to go on a trip, I look at my fly line, it's starting to crack, I get another spool I have in the bottom of my drawer, I put it on my reel, I go on the trip, and I feel like I can't cast, or it's taking me a long time to adjust the casting. And that's just a matter of a different fly line with a different taper, or maybe even a slightly different grain weight, even though it falls in the same line class. So aside from doing the numbers and looking at the taper charts, how can you actually physically do this? Well, for one, go to a fly shop. This is something that you can't do online. You can't cast a fly rod with a real line on it online. Go to a fly shop. There's a good chance that they'll have a handful of lines on some of their demo spools. And even if you're looking for a 4-weight, but they have the particular line that you want spool up on a 6-weight, you can start to kind of get an idea of what you're dealing with. That's recommendation number one. Always go to your fly shop. They're going to have the best hands-on options and be able to give you the best one-on-one interaction that you can get. Secondly, I would say go to a fly fishing expo. This is being recorded in the winter. I'm going to talk about fly fishing shows here at the end during the recommendation, but going actually to a dealer who is the maker of a fly line is important. They have them all there. And if you're a serious buyer, they'll want to put that in your hands and allow you to feel what that feels like. And maybe the difference between two of their tapers, their trout X line versus their trout Y line. And you can figure out the difference between the two and how they fit your casting stroke. So the last thing I'll say is keep your fly lines clean. It's simple, it's easy. I would say that cleaning your fly line is more important than cleaning your fly rod and cleaning your fly reel. Rods and reels, especially in freshwater, are virtually bulletproof. Line, on the other hand, gets the brunt of everything. And bad line is actually, in my experience, the first thing that causes my rod to have problems. My guides, especially my stripping guide and my tip top, they get worn down from dirty fly line. The line, it's plastic, and plastic, as it gets warmer, as it gets cold, it gets sticky, it gets rigid, stuff gets attached to it, small debris, even microscopic debris. As that runs through your guides, it's going to cause abrasion. And then as it gets wound back up on your reel, it's going to cause that fly line to become worn out. Cause cracks, cause nicks in it. If it kinks and you're not paying attention to how you're reeling, having a kink that is sitting for too long, exposed to extreme heat, extreme cold, that kink can set and then cause a crack. All sorts of problems by just not paying attention to your fly line. Again, it's not a delicate flower. While you're fishing, just take care of it like you would take care of any piece of gear that cost you more than $50. But as the season winds down, as the season picks back up, if you are using the same line and the same reel over and over again, take a little extra care to clean it. You can buy a product that cleans fly line. I usually just use, Dawn, the stuff that they put in, oil-covered penguin's eyes. If it's good enough for a penguin's eyes, it's good enough for my fly line. Not super hot water, just warm water, run through a cloth, reel it back on nice and tight, let it dry really well, and that fly line feels literally as good as new. So hopefully that's helped you think about fly line a little bit more. It's the unsung hero of fly fishing, and it's certainly worth spending a few more dollars on. Today's recommendation is the Fly Fishing Show. If you live in or near Denver, Colorado, Marlborough, Massachusetts, Edison, New Jersey, Atlanta, Georgia, Linwood, Washington, Pleasanton, California, or Lancaster, not Lancaster, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, then definitely head to the Fly Fishing Show this winter. The shows start the first week of January and go into the second week of March. This is a great place to go, experience products, learn from experts, learn new fly tying techniques, spend money, and actually get a lot more value out of a $15 ticket than you would ever expect. Just being able to go hands-on with products, whether that be a new pair of boots or a new fly line, is incredibly valuable. Make a day of it. Make 2 days of it. Take the classes. If you're not fishing in the wintertime, this is the best not fly fishing fly fishing thing that you can do. Buy your tickets in advance because at the door they take cash only. But definitely check it out. Go to their website, which is flyfishingshow.com. If you want more information as to why this is a good use of your time, head to castingacross.com and in the search bar put Fly Fishing Show. There's a number of articles, including a recent post where I interview the CEO of the Fly Fishing Show and kind of get his perspective on some of kind of the insider information regarding these shows. Thanks for listening to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. Please subscribe in your favorite podcast app and rate the podcast in iTunes. Then head over to castingacross.com where you'll find more info on this podcast and 3 posts a week on the people, places, and things that go into the pursuit of fish.